Copenhagen Wolves have done it. They have taken H2k out.
We already saw every team can beat every team in the LCS.
H2k is a really strong team right now.
The minions are all over Copenhagen Wolves base. H2k steamroll over the Copenhagen Wolves.
I feel like going against them, it's still gonna be hard. It's 50-50.
I think we are the underdog.
We are hungry for the playoffs. We want to show what we got and win.
That is a massive gnar! Copenhagen Wolves lock H2k up.
You do know for a fact that Wolves are pretty dangerous.
We just need to be the best right now.
And we all know in the best of 5 everything can happen. Yeah, we're Wolves Unchained now.
And welcome to the 2015 European League Championship Series Spring Playoffs. We're broadcasting to you live from our studio in Berlin, Germany, as our 4 quarterfinal teams take the next step on the road towards the Summoners Cup. Everything is getting on the way here in the studio. As you saw, the fans are lining up outside. The sun is shining. The atmosphere is high flow. Young Buck is having a little bit of fun as the Copenhagen Wolves enter the building with, of course, their coach Dentis ready to take on the action. Their H2k setting up on stage. Odo Wamne setting up as well and getting ready to step up in his quarterfinal. I'm Evje Schok-supporter, and joining me at the analyst desk today is Trevor Quickshot Henry and the former coach for Meet Your Makers, Jakob Yamado Cannon Mebdi. Welcome to the playoffs.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, we're gonna dip right into it and know that this time we are on patch 5.6 for the entirety of the playoffs, so another thing to adjust to for the teams. What has been the biggest change for you? Because Athene's Unholy Grail, it almost seems like the item has a bigger impact than the rest.
Yeah, most definitely. Like the champions that use it, like for example Oriana, are going to be stronger. But what I want to point out, which is the most important factor in this matchup, for example, is the fact that assassins are weaker. Like Ori is weaker, LeBlanc is weaker, and I think that is what's going to come into play the most this patch.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the rest of the lanes and the rest of the roles, not a whole lot has changed. There's some jungle XP changes, the Rift Scuttler gives way less vision, but all in all, 5.6 should be more of the same from 5.5, except for some changes there in that mid lane. And it is, of course, the patch we're going to play on through the entirety of the playoffs.
Yeah, we'll see what the teams pull out on this new patch. And turning back to the European LCS, let's take a look at the playoff bracket. The first match we've got coming up here is H2k versus the Copenhagen Wolves, best of 5. Then tomorrow, Gambit versus the Unicorns of Love, with SK and Fnatic waiting to take on those teams in the semifinals, and the team that ends up winning the playoffs will lock in their spot for the mid-season invitational. And the NA playoffs also start today, and actually immediately following our broadcast from Berlin, you'll see CLG versus Team Liquid. Something else I want to touch on before we go into match intro is what's new this season, the way the teams qualify for Worlds. They're going to rank up championship points. If you get to the quarterfinal or beyond, you get at least 10 points, 30 points if you get to the semifinal, and a team that has the most points, at the end of the summer split gets to go to Worlds, and this is just a totally different approach for the teams as well.
Yeah, it's a completely different mindset because you have to be consistently good for a longer period of time. You simply cannot afford to say, hey, I'm top 6 playoffs, I can now rest on my laurels, I'm back in summer split. If you want to make it to Worlds, you have to step up, go as far as you can in the playoffs to accrue as many points as possible.
Yeah, most definitely. Like this addition together with the auto relegation it kind of forces teams to care throughout the split, and I like the addition of these rules, even though we got auto-relegated.
Yeah, definitely. Let's not touch on that anymore. Anyway, you can still get tickets for the spring finals for both days. That'll be going on in the Palacio Vistalegre in Madrid, Spain, April 18th and 19th. We'll be seeing SK Gaming and Fnatic there, and the other 2 teams will know by tomorrow night. Go over to lolesports.com for all the info and tickets as usual, of course. For now, though, we want to check in with you guys at home and know what you are thinking. Tweet at LOLesports and tell us which quarterfinal team has the best chance at going to the finals and why. I'd like to turn to our panel as well. Jacob?
Well, most definitely H2k. I think they are the team that has the most refined way of playing. They play at a high level. They don't base their play on the enemy's mistakes, and they don't really they make some mistakes here and there, but their play is very, very refined, and I can see them in the future as well as in this playoffs that they will become like a top contender in Europe.
Yeah, well, seeing as though you took my answer, I'm going to have to pick another one. I think Unicorns of Love is the only other team that I think of the remaining Gambit, Copenhagen Wolves, UOL have a slim chance. They've shown in best of fives they can surprise. They took down TSM last year. They, qualified after being 0-2 down during the promotion tournament. So I think that's the only other squad, but I think it's slim. I think of the four, H2K's got the highest likelihood.
I agree.
All right. Well, let us know what you guys think, and remember to tweet at LL Esports using that hashtag LCS, and we'll discuss your answers later right here on the desk. So let's dive into our matchup we have on our hands today. The 3rd seed H2K Gaming versus the 6th seed, the Copenhagen Wolves, 1-1 in the regular season. And of course, Copenhagen Wolves beat H2K 3-0 last time when H2K tried to qualify through the spring promotion tournament.
Yeah, and it's actually really interesting you bring that up, because Copenhagen Wolves have shown through all the iterations in best of fives when they have to re-qualify for the LCS, they've won every single time. Yeah. H2K took 3 tries, failed all of them, and needed an expansion tournament to get in. So in terms of who has more skill in a best of 5 series, it's heavily in favor of the Wolves.
Yeah, we'll see. But we will start by taking a look at the lineup for H2K, as they will be on the blue side for this one. Odawamne, Lulex, Ryu, Hjarnan, Kissing, and their coach Prolly. If we look at the story of their season, as you said, Challenger getting in through the expansion tournament, a slow start, but since the addition of Kissing, fantastic run for H2K, and just being very strong as a team as opposed to individual stars. Now, the last couple of weeks, they have struggled a bit. They also said that themselves on the new patch. Yamato, there's a new patch here once again, 5.6. Do you think those problems will persist?
I think every team is going to face those problems, but in this, 5.6, I think is the perfect patch just for H2K. The mid-game champions are heavily favored, and I think, the mid-lane matchup is not as dynamic as it was before, and I think that heavily favors Ryu because I rate him top 2.
Oh, wow. Well, a little bit more on that in a second. I also want to touch on the top lane. Odawamne, people have said, well, he hasn't been that inventive since he's been in the LCS, but maybe he doesn't need to be.
He definitely doesn't need to be. He plays the meta picks, and for example, the game against Michimakers Us, though, he brought out Lulu. I didn't expect that from him because we've only seen him on tanks. So I can kind of expect him to play as well Hecarim today.
Oh, with some surprises. I think if you look at H2K as a team, this is the perfect definition of the sum of their parts is greater than any individual. There's no single one person you look at as that is the hard carry on the team. They just work well together. They make the right decisions. And something that we've been singing their praises the entire split is how H2K sort of go even at about 10 minutes, and between 10 and 20 minutes they accelerate this massive gold lead. They always push their lanes, they always take towers, and they do this over and over. You can see we actually wanted to visualize this for you. This is H2K's goal difference at 10 minutes. Look at the difference at 20 minutes. We have to literally rescale the entire graph just to show you how successful this team is in the mid game. The reason this is so important in this matchup, H2K and their control in the mid game straight out of the laning phase is the biggest area where they can punish the Copenhagen Wolves. Copenhagen Wolves do well individually in their lanes, but then they fall to pieces completely in the mid game. If we look at a similar graph for the Copenhagen Wolves, we can pull that one up, you'll see at 20 minutes, this is the Copenhagen Wolves goal difference. They're down in the majority of their games. And you can see they lose those, the vast majority. 4 of those negative values have resulted in victories. So for Copenhagen Wolves, the mid-game, immediately after the laning phase, once it ends, there is so much pressure on them to not make the mistakes they have made for the last 18 games.
Yeah, but then the question is, of course, they already had a better result than they've had before. So what are then the better aspects about the Copenhagen Wolves if you not take in mind that mid-game?
I think most definitely the fact that they have acquired Freeze. I think he makes a massive impact, especially on their early game, and also improves their draft a lot because he's drawing a lot of bans, and that's all you can ask for from a new player.
Yeah, you mentioned Freeze. Let's take a look at the lineup for the Copenhagen Wolves as they'll be on the red side for this one. We have Youngbuck, Airwax, Soren, Freeze, and the support Unlimited, and of course their coach Dentist. You touch on Freeze to start with, and that was the question for us going into the season. You only make one change to the AD carry. It better be a damn good AD carry, and it turned out to be. Soren also was freed up to do more and do better, but the question is, will it be enough in this best of 5 series?
The other thing you've also got to remember, not only was Freeze the player that changed, but the format of the team environment. Dentist came in as a coach. He's been one of the most vocal. And as a team, every time you look at them, you seem to feel like they're all on the same page. They're all friends. They're working towards the same goals. In their victories and their losses, they're always jovial. They're always a happy team. And I just feel like the addition of Freeze has brought the extra threat, because let's be frank, Youngbuck's not bringing threat to the game. But the addition of Dentist has brought some strategic thought and some ability to grow and adapt, because it has been a slower, lower trend, but it is positive for the Wolves.
Yeah. I like that you mentioned Young Buck, because when we talked to Dentist a couple of weeks ago, actually at the beginning of the season, he said, well, I redefined their roles. Young Buck is a top. He doesn't have to be a carry. He has to be there for the team and, well, support them in other ways. What is your impressions of Dentist and his influence, rather, on that team?
He's actually impressed me a lot. Like, I'm all about first impressions, and the first time I talked to him, he impressed me with his rhetoric and the way he speaks. So I like the guy.
All right, cool. Good to know. Well, let's take a look at our featured matchup in this one. It'll be in the mid lane. We already touched on it a little bit. Ryu versus Soren. You say Ryu is top 2 mids EU. Care to elaborate?
Well, basically, Ryu does something what I find beautiful. Players that find advantages by not taking risks. He always finds value by pushing minion waves, being at the right place at the right time, putting pressure on the map, which doesn't involve any risks, is guaranteed value, and a person that brings guaranteed value into your team is a perfect player.
Yeah, I agree with that entirely. Ryu does for H2k what the team needs. He's not a hard carry. He's not a game-winning mid laner. I don't know if I'd rate him second out of the LCS, but if you contrast him in the mid lane against Soren, I think there's quite a clash of styles. I think Ryu's a bit more adaptive, a bit more diverse. Soren likes to carry. He likes to try put Copenhagen Wolves on his back, and it'll be interesting to see how this dynamic plays out of solid and reliable versus sort of aggressive and try-hard carry.
Yeah. It's like, when I'm thinking about Soren, like, as we talked about 5.6, Ori is weaker, LeBlanc is weaker, I'm pretty sure Cassiopeia is going to get banned. And with this in mind, I don't think he will have the same amount of space in this patch as he had before when Copenhagen Wolves have taken victories.
Yeah, it'll be a good test to see if his skill is durable and can go over several patches. We'll see in this one. But before we get into picks and bans, we're going to check in on stage and talk to the coaches behind these two squads. So over to you, Stress.